that you might continue to strengthen us and give us wisdom to continue to press forward with the work that you have set before us. Lord, we pray for AFAB this morning and its work. But we also pray, dear Lord, for the network of clergy connected to the work. May we be not just hearers of your word, but may we be doers as well, going forth with what you've entrusted us to do to your glory. We thank you and we praise you. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Amen. Thank you, Reverend Daphne. So, like I said, welcome to the 21st Clergy Breakfast. And after 20 years, it has becoming like a tradition in the community for us to meet once a year. So we can sit down with the clergy, Catholic and Protestant, just to talk about how to deal with the problem of domestic violence in the churches. We are not going to kid ourselves to say that domestic violence doesn't exist in the churches. We already know that it does. So the problem is how, as a community, that we want to deal with it. So even COVID-19 this year could not stop us to do a clergy breakfast. People keep telling me how we're going to have the party today. There won't be no party, no coffee, nothing, but we are going to have to sit and talk about domestic violence and how we can deal with it in our community like any other communities are dealing with it. We welcome all the new first-time participants this year. We see a few faces that are here for the first time attending our clergy breakfast. And also we are welcoming all the whole-timers, like people from the Roundtable, like Pastor Daphne and Latri. I don't want to start naming people. And I just saw Father Mirak. If I start naming people, I won't finish today. So welcome. So we hope that we are going to have a great time in the Lord to talk about domestic violence, because there is no other time like during the time of that pandemic to talk about domestic violence, because according to the Department of Public Health, we have seen an increase of 20% of domestic violence in the community. And we already know, because of the confinement, we can multiply that 20% by another 2, because we know it's a lot. And even at AFAB, we have seen an increase in the number of people calling because of domestic abuse and talking with other people from the roundtables. We know it's the same thing for them as well. They are having an increase of domestic violence between intimate partners. They're having an increase between parents and kids, kids and parents. So we know there is an increase. The problem is, as a community, as God-fearing people, what are we going to do about domestic violence? And for that, we have a great speaker this year. And we have Greg Norberg-Baum. I think Greg has been working in domestic violence for over 40 years. We can say Greg has been a trusted ally with AFAB for years. Greg was working with Gendo for over 15 years, working with men, mostly to educate them to do prevention on domestic violence. We have been doing prevention with women for years, and I think it's time, and Greg has been doing it for years, but it's time now that more men join hands with Greg and to do the work. And before working with Gendo for 15 years, Greg was also the executive director working in St. Louis, Missouri, with and also the one of the founding members of Raven. Raven stands for Rape and Violence End Now. And for people who have been looking at the work that the men, white women have been doing, every year, I think it's April, where we will see a lot of people with white ribbon attached to it on their chest. That's what that means. That's white women, that's men against domestic violence. They are trying to do prevention and education to see where, if they can slow the problem of domestic violence in the community, in their community. And without any further ado, Craig, you got the screen.
Sure. Thank you so much, Carmel, and everyone. It's such an honor to speak with you this morning. Um, it's such a pleasure to, especially to speak in an environment with clergy, since you have such a strong role with families, strong role with a sense of self, who people are, who people want to be. And this is what we mean by primary prevention. The prevention practices are about who we want to be. Who do we want our children to grow up to be like? And who are our heroes? And who do we look up to? I think that the folks in the room are among those people who folks look up to. And so I acknowledge a few folks in the room that are friends and seen for years, and this is a true pleasure. I'm going to share my screen and share some slides. Give me a moment while I get that going. So the host needs to give me permission to share. You can make me a co-host, that should do it.
You should be able to share. All right, why don't we just, if you can start and we'll find it and share it.
Sure, you can just allow me to share my screen using your control panel. If you look for my name on the participant list, there ought to be an option to allow me to share.
Okay.
That will work fine. But so as Carmel mentioned, it's a 40-year journey for me. Half that time I spent doing direct services and interventions with men who batter in particular. And so have this experience along with going from there, wondering how do we do a broader ending of the problem? You work with individual families over and over again. We all know we look for ways to end domestic and sexual assault. And so part of that is a whole community project about how we are as people and how we are as families. So the work I've done since, so thank you, I can share now. So the work of prevention looks to me like community conversation, looks like a dialogue about our lives. And I invite men who care to think about this with us into that circle of conversation. What are men and boys' role in prevention? How can we be partners in prevention? My talk in the next 15, 20 minutes is going to be really all about that. How large is our community of men caring about this? What are the roles men and boys can play in supporting an end, or what I might call a promotion in the strength and health of manliness? What is the strength and health of manliness that will support this work? And I think that there are strengths that the community of our own cultural communities bring to support prevention. I'm going to define that term, and I hope that you understand how that might work. We will say a word about the problem. I'll pause there a bit to get people to kind of ask questions about the dimensions of what we're talking about here. It's surprisingly large, I want to say. It's so surprisingly large that we consider it like the air we breathe or the water we swim in. We barely notice it. It's like people say things like, boys will be boys. Unpacking that can be a painful, long process about what we mean when we say that. How do we honor the spirit of boys who are not like boys? How do we honor the spirit of girls who want to be not like girls? It's a very, very meaningful conversation about boys will be boys. It's part of, I think, the problem, and I hope to say part of the solution. We'll talk about program examples, concrete, off-the-shelf programs that can be implemented in your localities. You can do these trainings, you can do programs, and they exist with terrific support right now. And that's what I'm proud to say. Over the past 20 years in particular, concrete programs are available for implementation that go towards these goals. So, appreciations. Women have led the way. And I wouldn't be here if women hadn't asked me to, or hadn't insisted that we do. I have a survivor history, and so that survivor history gives me energy to make this my life's work. There are female survivors and male survivors. The great majority of survivors in this problem are female, and a handful are male. male children experience sexual abuse in large numbers, similar numbers to female children. I want folks to know that, because in your audiences, there will be survivors of all sorts. So bringing attention and spotlight to survivor needs is very meaningful and powerful to the connections of community. I want to thank the advocates who are here, Carmel, Carlene. I see others in the room today who are advocates in this work. Thank you for your work. And I want to say how powerful and strong I feel that there are men who are here now. I want to say thank you.
I just hope it doesn't stop the...
So I'm a member of the Global Men Engage Alliance. So this work is a global engagement now worldwide. Every country, pretty much every section of the world, there's work going on to engage men and boys to promote gender equality. That term, gender equality, connects with gender-based violence. The communities and villages, I might say, more small villages where there's very little domestic violence,
I turned it off because they
pointed towards the equality of women. The stature of women is equal to men in leadership in their community. And that one factor points to lower domestic and sexual assault. It's a matter of respect, isn't it? And this question of power and control that we talk about, that why does domestic and sexual assault take place? It's about the maintenance of position, I have to say, as opposed to some negative consequence or some failure or some limitation of mine. Is because I get to and I want to. Let's think about that want that men have. This network is worldwide. You'll see that there are networks in the highlighted areas. There are networks. So Africa, South America, North America, India, Europe, Asia. Across the world, there are regions well organized. There's a strong Caribbean network called CARIMAN, and CARIMAN is looking for support. I don't know the connection for Haitian populations to CARIMAN, but I would imagine there is a connection. So I want you to mention that. So there's a network, and if you look at menengage.org, you'll see the large number of people around the world in the regions. I'm strongly involved in the North American region. So there's dimensions of the problem. The UN Women estimates 35% of women globally experienced physical or sexual assault in their lifetimes. Well, just take that in for a moment. How many is that? That's 1 in 3. That's a lot of people. Center for Disease Control in the USA have data showing that 1 in 3 women and 1 in 4 men and boys in the US have experienced sexual violence involving physical contact during their lifetime. That's largely as boys. So is it part of the raising of boys to sexually violate them? Question mark. The majority of offenders are male. So these are things, just let this sink in for a moment about the dimensions of this. It's just like the air we breathe. So the audiences that we all have survivors and offenders in them. We mentioned the impact of COVID-19. Carmel mentioned that the situation has worsened for survivors at home, where there's already the tendency towards abuse and power of this kind. Being kind of closed in with your partner raises tensions. We know that there are more calls. We know that it's more dire for situations, and new situations are arising every day. Just want to let you know it's worth addressing the question. It's worth promoting peace and patience. It's worth promoting health, taking a breath, taking your time, taking a step back, particularly speaking to the men in communities to help men feel that it's okay to take a step back and to sit down. Sitting down in a chair is a wonderful way to relax the situation. Encourage your male friends to sit. How are men involved, really? Some are offenders. An enormous number of men are offenders in their lifetime. We're not talking here the daily offenders, but once in your life, 1 in 3. 1 in 3. Some are victims, 1 in 5 to 1 in 10, once in their life. But many, many of us are bystanders. So I'm going to speak the rest of this talk on the need of activating our bystanders as part of the solution. We can contribute and we can help. There's a spectrum of readiness I want to speak about, because this will help you think about who in your audiences you're speaking to. I like to divide audiences of males into 4 categories to help us message to our audiences. On the one end, there are men who are hostile and opposed to this message. The message of, oh, we're making girls out of boys. Or, I have the right, don't tell me what I can and can't do. There are men who find this not interesting, not in what they want to talk about. They feel a little bit uncomfortable with the conversation. They're largely uninterested. Then there's a community of men who I know very well, who are willing and ready. They need something to do. They'd like to do something, and they'd like to have suggestions for doing those things. And then finally, there are active leaders like myself who've been in the field. You've all met those leaders, and I would invite them, folks in the room today, as being active leaders in the field of prevention. So each of these categories really are looking for something different in a message. You know, active leaders are certainly looking for some appreciation and maybe a vacation from time to time. The willing and ready are looking for things to do. What can I do today that would be helpful? I'd be happy to help if I knew what that was. The uninterested need a wake-up call, that they really have a role to play, and we hope that they come in and help during the major times of the year, such as October Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Finally, the hostile and opposed need accountability, protective walls, need to be attended to. It's largely an emergency situation, and police action and emergency shelter works in this area. So if you think about this, who are your friends? Where do they sit? Who are your family? Who are your colleagues? Where do we all sit? Which part? And if you're making a conversation, you like to say something to an audience, which of these categories are you speaking to? I find this helpful. So let me define now for a moment the question of primary prevention. You've probably heard the term before. It comes from a framework of a river flowing downstream strongly, and there are people in the river in trouble, drowning. What do? Well, you jump in. I'll put my pointer in, you'll see it. You jump in and you rescue people out of the water using boats and ropes and floats. You jump in yourself to swim and grab them and bring them to shore. You rescue them and you dry them off. You help them become warm again, and you feed them. That's called intervention. It's emergency work. Necessary, has to be done first in every community. Now there are people upstream, upriver, who are in trouble, who are in the difficult water and need help to swim, need help to float, need help to find the shore. This is called at-risk populations, and it's called secondary prevention. You can be sure that most of the people you talk to are in this water. Almost everyone in your audience is somewhere in the water. But then let's move all the way to the top, to the wellhead, to the upstream where the water, people are actually going into the water. What does it look like before the problem starts? Who is not yet in trouble? How can they be helped to never get into the water? What is that work? Good question. Now, all of this work needs to be done. All of it needs to be done at the same time. And because how different these pieces of work are, no one agency or group can do all of this work. We need a community, we need a village to share and cooperate so that each of these parts of the work can be done. So this chart, this visualization gives you an idea of a whole community coming together for the purposes of ending domestic violence and sexual assault. I'm thinking about primary prevention today, and the training I have at hand is quite exciting as I'm working with preschool teachers.
Greg, can you stop for a little bit?
Of course.
And if you people are trying to get in, so we are going to see if anybody want to ask question before we continue.
That's a good idea.
Because it's, for me, it's a lot of time to get in at once. If there is anybody who have any question that want to ask some question right now.
I'm happy to go back a slide or two if you'd like to ask a question about other parts.
This data is staggering.
Yes, it is. Just sitting with the dimensions of it.
But there is something that we are not using in the community, that men are working to end domestic violence.
Yes.
And I think that's something that probably we need to talk more about, how other men can get involved,
Of course.
working, doing the work, because they always see women at the forefront dealing with domestic violence, but they are not used to see men faces
Yes.
dealing with
Yes.
domestic violence.
It can
And
start with a discussion group. That's where it starts. Shall I continue, Carmel?
yes, because yeah.
Yeah? Okay. So I wanted to bring a few examples to bring some of these ideas to life. I have 3 examples. But this kind of says what these parts are in general. Emergency work, bystander activation is in the secondary, and then teaching healthy relationships is how we categorize primary prevention largely. So this is the work. You can tell that an educational program can handle bystander activation and teaching healthy relationships. Bystander training, one example is a national program called Mentors in Violence Prevention. It trains people to think about scenarios and situations. What would I do if this occurred? If my neighbor yelled and screamed? If my son or my daughter called me and said I'm in trouble? Or if you were at a dinner party and you saw something occur and you wanted to intervene, how would you intervene successfully? Bystander training helps with these scenarios and gives you ways to intervene safely and successfully. Fatherhood Support is a wonderful off-the-shelf program for helping dads be nurturing and learn to be fathers. It's particularly helpful for fathers of young children. The Family Nurturing Program in Dorchester has a most wonderful program called the Nurturing Fathers Program that you can send dads to learn some new skills. It's a beginning and an end, and gives a wonderful support in a group setting among fathers to be nurturing. And I consider that to be an important approach to primary prevention, is simply encouraging men to be the nurturing, caring selves they already are. Then there's a campaign idea called the Men Care Campaign. It's international, it's in many places around the world. This is a poster campaign that shows local men in caring roles, taking care of their children, taking care of their home, washing dishes, cleaning the house, going out and taking care of their grandparents, being in the school with the children. Just posters showing men in caring roles, encouraging the healthy, positive aspects of masculinities. So let me go this a little further with some photos. Here's bystander training programs. On the left is graduation. On the right are the leaders. This particular program uses sports coaches as the trainers and leaders. So coaches are a wonderful audience to give this training to, and how to work with their teams with some important messages about equality. The fatherhood training is strong connections with supporting dads to be with their kids in fun, safe, and healthy ways. It's nothing more. Let's learn to prepare a bottle and change the diapers. And finally, these posters are examples of the Men Care campaign, celebrating local men in nurturing roles. On the left, you'll see a girl celebrating her wonderful stories that her father tells her. And on the right, you see a father together with his children playing in the playground, dancing together, making joyous times together. So let me start through the conclusion by drawing some suggestions for churches. You may have a Domestic Violence Awareness Month special service. If there's one thing that you do in the year and are not able to implement programs the rest of the year, implement one sermon or program on a Sunday during October or a weekend during October for Domestic Violence Awareness Month to highlight the need. Or if you already have a men's health group conversation or a men's study group or a prayer group, have a conversation there about men's health. Health about anger, health about conflicts, health about self-care, health about many aspects of if you or your neighbor were involved with domestic violence, how would you help them? How would you like them to help you? These are the kinds of questions. We want to have a strength-based approach where we're all in this together. Finally, you can have a healthy relationships education curriculum in your schools for parents, especially fathers, in raising boys. These curriculum materials are available. Every year in March and into April, the first week it starts in March, it launches what we call the White Ribbon Day campaign. Jane Doe Inc. is JDI, State Coalition Against Sexual Assault and Domestic Violence. This is a network of services such as AFAB that do emergency services for victims every day. White Ribbon is a call to action for men and boys to be part of the solution, have a conversation, take the pledge to be part of the solution. This is what you do that day is I promise to be part of the solution to end gender-based violence. You can go to janedoe.org, White Ribbon Day, for more information and to sign up. So again, in summary, really, help men take a stand for change. Allow and encourage diversity. There are many kinds of people in this work. Talk about gender roles. There are more ways than one. Become active bystanders. There is something you can do. Celebrate this change for men. It's a manly thing to do. Fathers, coaches, friends, colleagues, and partners alike. I'm available for conversation if you want to connect with me directly, and I believe this slide set can be sent to you by AFAB if you'd like to have it. So thank you very, very much. Please think about your questions. I'm happy to go back to slides. I know the dimensions of the problem are often things you want to talk about, but I really appreciate your listening to me this morning, and I'm concluding. Love to hear your questions.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you so much. If we can unmute people for a while so they can ask questions. And we are going to ask questions like 2-3 people. Just I'll name you and you go one after another. If people can raise their hand, there is a button on your computer where you can click the raise hand button, or you can raise your hand from the screen and someone will see you. So you can ask questions and we'll unmute people for a few minutes.
We do have a question in the chat room. Martina asks, how can we access the trainings?
Sure. So each of these programs have websites. And if you get my slides, the links are active for each of the programs. So MVP Strategies will give you information on how to connect with the bystander education. And I believe Boston Area Rape Crisis Center, who's on the meeting this morning, has a bystander program to offer as well. There are the other programs, Fatherhood Support, the Family Nurturing Center, I believe in Dorchester has the program available. You can contact them, they'll bring it right over. And the Men Care campaign is international and has a website and an office that you can talk to about getting some of the posters.
And also
So
for somebody who
all
can,
online.
if somebody doesn't remember the name that Craig just gave, you can call AFAB anytime and we'll connect you with Craig for training.
Sure, and happy to send you the slides.
Okay. Anybody else?
Are there free trainings?
It varies. Some are free, some are for fee. It varies on the trainings. And so that would be a conversation for when you look into it. I know that the Mentors of Violence Prevention provides training of trainers for a fee. They'll do a group of people and train them all in the program, and they can then do it themselves. That's an annual symposium that they do in the summer and in the fall and the winter. So that's Mentors of Violence Prevention trainings are for a fee. I know that's true. Then you can implement the program yourself. So it varies, the answer to that.
Okay, we would like to let people know that question can be asked in English or in Haitian Creole. So si quelqu'un qui veut poser question en créole, pas aucun problème, mais juste faire question courte et puis bien précise Ou capable poser question en la langue que vous voulez poser question.
Wonderful.
Renard has her hand raised.
Okay, we're not.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. Thank you, Greg, for that wonderful presentation.
Welcome.
And I'm really happy to see that, you know, there is an organization or organizations working toward addressing the problem at the root. I have two questions. One is, what are you doing with the media to kind of let them know of this type of things that are around so that we see a more consistent, you know, image of these kind of positive things?
Yes.
And the second question is the term training for bystander. I
Yes.
wonder if it is specifically that you use that word bystander, because I would think upstander would fit what you're doing more here, because
Yes.
by definition, bystander is not active, it's passive.
Yes. I agree with you. Bystander is the most well-known term. And when you use the word bystander, people imagine people who are watching what's happening. That's the reason that term is used. We say bystander activation. So you're not a silent bystander, but a visible and active bystander. When you say upstander, I've found that many youth programs use the idea of bystander to upstander.
Okay.
So you become an upstander.
Mm-hmm.
So I like your thinking about that. You're thinking exactly correctly in terms of the idea of the training. With regard to media, the White Ribbon Campaign is a media program. It's to bring the idea to the broad public. And so there are public service announcements and opportunities for media to support this. And you can find on the Jane Doe Inc. YouTube channel lots and lots of videos and public service announcements that the media has generated with regard to the message of the White Ribbon Campaign. That's largely the work of the local program and their local media. So your connection to the media is very important. Local folks who ask the media to support their programs. I'll do a shout out for Laverne Gordon, who's in the room this morning. She's an activist and does work with domestic violence awareness and does several events, a couple of which are media events, like a heel-a-thon for men to wear high heels. Sounds almost comedy, but it's also a media event to think about how do we walk in each other's shoes and be supportive and connected with one another. Or doing annual galas or other events that the media would want to cover. That's what media is all about, is they'd like to see something exciting, something visual, something today, something meaningful. So it's really the challenge of the local program to generate these interests for the media. I think the media has a very short memory, and they're looking for the latest idea.
We have a question from Yodeline. She said, what strategies would you recommend to engage men who might be reluctant to be involved in this work?
Sure. Frequently, men are motivated to think about their children, their daughters and their sons. So thinking of men who are parents, speak with them about being parents and where their parenting troubles and difficulties are. Provide support as parents. That's an important starting place for many men who feel reluctant. The reluctance comes from a couple of places. Some of that reluctance is, I'm going to be blamed for it. I'm not a problem, so I shouldn't be blamed. I think blame is I think more an issue with someone who's worried that what they've done is wrong. That's where you have a conversation, a discussion in a health group about behavior and what is right and wrong. I think many of us are confused about what's right and wrong. So it's good to have a conversation. So I approach them with some compassion and with an open, affirmative invitation. We need you.
Could we hear for some of the church leaders in the room, like on the screen? We haven't heard from anyone yet. Okay, Marjorie is talking. Could somebody unmute her?
Margie, please unmute.
Marjorie Jean-Pierre is talking.
Unmute.
I actually wasn't talking, but I will say something. How would you recommend that the churches implement awareness
Sure.
in their programs or in their usual activities?
Sure. There are a number of directions to take that question. One is programmatic, which is you implement some conversation about that within study groups. You make a focus of this for a sermon, for a presentation. You think about safety and you think about masculinity, and you have a conversation about this. Give people a chance to kind of surface where they are with this and what we feel it should be, because this is the leadership folks are looking for. So those are the simple places to start. To do an awareness event during October Domestic Violence Awareness Month. By the way, April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, so one can do it twice a year if you are motivated. That's an easy beginning place. Now, it's a little more effort, but then considering a bystander training, or consider a joint bystander training with multiple churches, or consider a fatherhood support program implementing the fatherhood, nurturing fatherhood program, which I think is available to be implemented in many settings. So this would be my suggestion.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, what is the wave?
Someone else is talking. I heard.
Yes, I'm trying to raise my hand. But okay,
You can talk.
all right. So you can see my face. Yes, I think somebody asked a question how to approach the churches in terms of domestic violence. I think what we need to do in the church, we have to go beyond worshiping. So many of the churches are simply engaged in worshiping. So we have not really, done anything besides worshiping. I think once we start going into worshiping, we start doing educational programs, we start doing outreach, then domestic violence therapy, I would say, will come into place. So also there's a program it's nationwide. It's called Emerge. It's a support group for men that abuse women. So what I do in those instances, I will go as a woman, I will go to those programs myself. I go to the trainings and see what they do and try to apply it in the community. So maybe the men can go to some of those trainings and see what they do and apply them. And also sometimes those cases end up in courts and the judges will refer the men to some trainings. And then what happened is that even if the cases are referred, or the judges refer the cases to like a community therapy, we don't have that available that I know of, men therapy in the Haitian community. So sometimes I do send people to AFAB. When I meet them, I probably send a lot of people to AFAB.
Yeah, it would be wonderful to support a Haitian group, wouldn't it? Emerge would be delighted, I think, to support a Haitian group.
Yes, so I would advise for the men to go attend some of those meetings, some of those trainings, and then bring them to the community. Because as an educator, even though I have a theological formation, that's why I want to bring the community. I want to apply my formation in education, whether it's domestic violence education, is learning, period. So we have to go beyond worshiping.
Yes.
Did I see Pastor Daphne raising his hand?
Yeah, I wanted to interject one thing. On our end, we try to do at least some formal presentation, whether it be sermon, testimonial during Domestic Violence Month. And I think it's imperative that churches are intentional about the inclusion of the topic so that it can be addressed and dealt with. Those presentations have led to additional conversations and discussions and sometimes referrals, and it's just enabled us to do a broader work in terms of ministry. I totally hear what you said, Nikita. Sometimes churches are solely focused on worship and teaching scripture, we're not actually pulling out of scripture some of the current day social ills that are transpiring then and now. Like, for example, King David has a son who rapes a daughter in 2 Samuel, and then another son who then enacts revenge on his brother, and it's both domestic violence and homicide, right? And how does that play out in terms of modern day? Yet it's not normally taught from that perspective. And so I think there are plenty of biblical examples where we can make connections, and we just have to do it.
Yes, that's true.
You can keep on going and go to Agar. Agar
Right.
the first abused woman in the Bible.
We could go down the list.
Yeah.
There are plenty of examples, but
Yeah.
as clergy, we just have to make these connections and pull it out, because that is what then empowers our congregants to feel comfortable enough to speak and share and get the support that they need.
Yeah.
And we have to empower the women too.
Sure.
We have to empower the women, and that's what I'm doing, a series of women in the Bible. I'm learning to do video production, so that's what I'm doing with my confinement, while confining.
Now.
So I'm sending the website for Emerge.
I'm sorry?
I'm sending the site for Emerge.
Oh, very good, in the chat.
Yes.
Very good. So the training of being a successful referral, making a successful referral is important. The other, successfully responding to a disclosure, is another part of that training. I know that the Boston Area Rape Crisis Center specializes in this. AFAB specializes in this. I would assume in terms of how to respond to a disclosure of either being an offender or being a survivor. Wouldn't it be wonderful if church ministers were able to welcome disclosures of being an offender and being able to respond to that in a successful way? These are not easy moments, but they're very important moments.
Good.
Yes, hello?
Hello?
Yes. In terms of data, before the virus, and now we had coronavirus coming, then how many people, how many cases you got come to you or who disclose what's going on to their life in terms of domestic violence? I'm talking about for the churches. And then right now, because of the virus, is that the number changing?
Increase.
Carmel, do you want to speak to that?
So the question is for girl or for myself? Well,
no,
like I said at the beginning, we have seen according to Department of Public Health, there is an increase of 22%, but we know that it's much more than 22% because of confinement and all the Boston police station closed. A lot of people are not reporting the domestic violence abuse. So it's much more than 22%. And even at AFAB, we have seen an increase. For the month of June, we have seen almost like a 300% of the number of new cases that we've seen in March. So the numbers are there. Even talking with the other advocate from the Roundtable, all of them got an increase of cases that they have been working with. Even the advocate from the Boston Police, they are all doing overtime because there is not enough advocates at each station. They are all doing overtime because there is so many cases that they have to deal with.
Wow, actually this is what because of the virus right now, this is why the cases is up there. Then what can we do as a group, as a roundtable, to bring down the cases the way it used to or lower than what it's doing? This is discussion for everybody.
What we are doing right now, talking about it, doing some prevention and education, and go out there. Don't be shy about it, because I heard people say, "Oh, I don't have any domestic violence cases in my church," but we know it's not true because we've seen those people that have coming for services. So when you say that there is no domestic violence at your church, I don't think it's honest to say so, because it's not true. because domestic violence is all over the place. And by the way, also it's not an Haitian situation, it's not an Haitian problem. We have seen also some men victim of domestic violence. And sometimes people don't talk about those. They are not a lot. Statistically, we can say that there is more, we have more women victim of domestic violence, but we do have a few men that are victim as well. But with a work like what Greg is doing, if you go to a church, not only you work with the men, but the men also at home will work with their wife and their kids and their daughters, their son. And that's a way that we probably do some education and prevention in domestic violence. It's one of the way.
Reverend Delphonse is asking somebody to read his question, which is, when should the police be involved in a case of domestic violence?
It's an excellent question. People call the police frequently when things are in immediate danger for their lives and they need help. Frequently, police do the wrong thing. Frequently, the police do the right thing. It goes both ways. Once upon a time, it was always the wrong thing. You would take someone, walk around the block and listen to the man and tell them to be home and tell them to be quiet, but not take any more action. So I would imagine that Carmel has direct experience about how the police behave, but the ideas that do call the police involve them. And I think as a community, we're involved in police training so that the best responses occur. There's two sides of the equation, which is how does one support the survivor for safety, and how does one support the offender for accountability? So it's immediate when danger occurs.
When you are dealing with police, the problem is you cannot remove the cultural piece from it, because it's not something that most immigrants are used to call the police. This week, I think it was Wednesday, there was a domestic abuse case somewhere in Dorchester, and the police came over and they asked the woman to go take a restraining order. That was the first thing they said. You go tomorrow morning, go set a restraining order. But without explaining to the woman what a restraining order is.
Yeah.
So of course, she went and got the restraining order. And Wednesday afternoon, she called me crying. She wanted to vacate the restraining order because that's not what she wanted. She wanted the guy to be punished, but she didn't want the guy to go to jail. But she called the police anyway, thinking that when the police come to her house, the police will be able to talk to both of them and make the abuse stop. But that's not what happened. Sometimes people don't understanding when clients said or victims said, I don't want the police to get involved. It's not all the time that they want the police to get involved.
Yes, can I say something?
It has to be on their own. Force them to call the police.
Okay. Okay. Can I say something? I don't see the hand to raise your hand. Okay, here it is. Am I on?
Yes.
Can I say, oh, yes. And then to echo what Carmel just said, and also when you become involved in the courts, you are no longer dealing with your wife or your husband. So you are dealing with the court system. So even though the partner or the victim wants to vacate the order, the court is not going to do it right away, because now, the defendant, the partner, the abuser is the defendant dealing with the court system. So, that can go into immigration issues and you can be deported. So it's a lot when you call the police. So it's not just, okay, I'm going to forget it. I'm going to dismiss it. I'm going to ask the court to dismiss it. No, that's not going to happen this way. So sometimes those cases people end up being deported. So it's very serious.
Not to call. I know people don't like it.
Yes. Okay, we don't have that much time. We got like 10 minutes before we end. Okay. One last question that we can take, and it has to be a short one because we got a few things that we need to cover. We need to talk about the roundtable, the history of the roundtable, and we have the final prayer with Father Gustave.
Laverne had her hands up. Oh.
This is Lola from Women's Bar Foundation. It's not a question, but if there's time, I'd like to add something to the question about when police are involved in restraining orders. But if this is not the appropriate time, let me know. I don't want to take this away from.
Is that Lola?
Yeah, hi. Bonjour.
Okay, you can ask the question. You can add what you have to add.
Okay, just very quickly, on the question of when to call the police or not, when to call the police and how to access the police is a very big question in our community right now. So that's a societal question, and whether police should be involved in these questions in the first place is a loaded one. But also there are two aspects to this, you know, the restraining order as a civil matter and protection as a criminal matter. And there are some times when, and I understand the hesitancy of our communities to call the police, there is a lot of not freedom, but there's a lot of space in restraining orders for survivors to have things that will serve them better. So stay away order, do not call order, do not come to the house order, and things like that. So people should be accessing those if that's what they need, and using advocates like Carmel and Regine to explain to them the difference between what they can choose on those forms versus the criminal orders, which the survivor does have a lot less flexibility in. But that's kind of, those cases tend to be cases where the Commonwealth decides that the abuse is so beyond, you know, is to the level where the Commonwealth wants to press charges. And so there are the two things to balance, and just people should be encouraged to seek restraining orders if they want them, with the understanding of what they can do. And the criminal process and the civil restraining orders can be separate. So I just wanted to highlight the subtle but very important difference between those two things.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I had one more person that want to ask a question. Could the person do it quick? The name, Regine, what's the name?
Laverne.
Oh, Laverne. Hi, Laverne.
Good morning, all. Good morning, Carmel. So not a question, but an addition to the presentation. Thanks all for holding space for this. But in addition to, so holding presentations from the pulpit is really important. A lot of the times people just need permission to speak about what they've been going through. So talking about it from the pulpit is really important. But in addition to that, hosting space for teens in the church as well, where the cycle starts to repeat itself, is really important as well. So hosting teen DV relationship workshops is really, really helpful as well. And again, a lot of the times these children are seeing the things from home and they're bringing it back to their peers at school or in church, and they're repeating it. And so being able to help break that cycle from that early on is really important as well.
Yeah, over there, we can say that AFAB that we don't have that problem because there is a trusting relationship between us and most of the clergy in the community. So we are fortunate to have that connection with the clergy in Boston, because we have been doing this thing for like 21 years, doing the clergy breakfast. So there is a trust between the organization and the clergy, because before it used to be hard to knock at the door for us to go do presentation, but now they are bringing their own members for services. So I think that there is a huge step in the relationship between us and the clergy. So Colleen, we are going to move with the roundtable story. And also everybody, also we can invite people who are here right now to come to the roundtable. We meet every first Wednesday, even remotely. We're still doing it. So they are welcome. So Colleen.
Good morning, everyone. We want to thank everyone for this wonderful, rich dialogue. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, Carmel, Regine, all the members of the Roundtable. 1988, the Association of Haitian Women was founded. 10 years as a voluntary organization. 1998, we automatically noticed that this massive cancer we call domestic violence in our society needed to be addressed at multiple levels. Hence, we started the dialogue with different members of the community. 1999, we founded the Haitian Roundtable on Domestic Violence. And it's been wonderful for the past 21 years, but yet we have more work that we need to do. In time of this pandemic, we see the rise of domestic violence, and it's more important to get clergy members committed to the work. I think today it's been phenomenal in the way that Craig explained the many ways we can get involved, not only in terms of doing sermons, but training and so many other facets, so many other ways. So we think that the work has been wonderful the past 21 years, but we have more to do. And we believe that you are committed in the work, and we look forward to working more closely with every one of you, especially the clergy members. Now, we are running out of time. I do have one more thing that I'd like to share with everyone. The collaboration with the Roundtable members have been solid. The collaboration with the clergy members have been great. We continue to collaborate with different organizations in the Haitian community and beyond. Hence, we have different activities, and one of them is this town hall meeting. We have a town hall meeting this next Wednesday, July 1st at 7 p.m. And at the town hall meeting, we'll get a chance to really converse with many people. We have brief presentations by Dr. Cassandra Pierre, who's the head epidemiologist at Boston Medical Center. And we have Dr. Patrick Ulysse, who's the Chief Operating Officer for Partners in Health. He's in charge of all the different programs of PIH in 11 countries, including what's going on here in Massachusetts. We have Shirley Magny-Normalis, and the discussion will be moderated by well-known Dr. Jean Bonnet. So we'd like for you to please use the chat room. Send us your telephone number, your email. We want to make sure everyone gets this flyer. Now we are ending. Camille, I'd like to pass it back to you, but before I end my piece, I want to say I am so appreciative of all of you. The work has been tremendous. Earlier, Pastor Daphnis mentioned the work. Colleen, you've been at it for a long time. But let's say AFAB would not have been able to do the work without phenomenal people like Regine and Carmel and all the Roundtable members and so many folks beyond what we see on a daily basis. Craig, we thank you very much for the presentation, for the work on domestic violence, especially prevention with men, working on prevention with men. We really applaud your work, and we know you're going to keep on responding positively when we knock on your door. So thank you so much, Kamel.
Thank you. If we can unmute Father Gustave. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Father Gustave.
Yes, I'm on now. Thank you, Carmel. First of all, I wanted to present my sincere gratitude to Greg. The presentation was very informative, and I wanted to tell him that he did not preach in the desert. So what the seed is spread was received on a fertile ground, and personally, in my communities, I will do my best, especially to start the mental health group, which I think is the marvelous idea that I have heard today. And from that point, we will start in Cambridge and Somerville, something that can help to reduce domestic violence in our Haitian society. So since it is my opportunity and pleasure to do the closing prayer, I am asking those who are able to do so to close their eyes, even to open their hands, and let us pray. Eternal Trinity of love, in peace and majesty you reign. All things come forth from you alone. To you, O Lord, they must return again. Creation lives and breathes in you. We want to tell you how grateful we are for your son, Greg, who presented this morning how we may create a safer environment for our families, especially for our fathers, mothers, and children. God, all creation is sustained by your almighty will. Grant us to know you, a God of truth, in whom the questing mind is still. Our Father, in the name of Christ, unceasingly your Spirit ascend. Be with us. Be with Afab. Be with Greg. Be with all of us, everlasting God. Fulfill your purpose to the end. We praise you, Godhead, one in three, immortal Trinity of light, unchanging through eternal days. You live unmoved, serene in might. May we continue to praise you in all our work to reduce domestic violence and to increase the quality of our family lives in Boston and in the Haitian society. We pray to you, God one in three, you who lives and reigns forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Amen, amen, amen. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for being with us. So we know even not, like I said, even COVID could not stop us to do the clergy breakfast, but we did it anyway. So we really appreciate you being here. It has been a wonderful journey for 21 years. And hopefully we can have one face-to-face next year, or 22nd one to be face-to-face. And we'll have party and food like we usually do. So goodbye, have a good day. Be safe out there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Good to see you. Stay safe.
Thank
Good job,
Comment,
everybody.
can you remind everybody when the roundtable
job,
meets
Craig.
again?
The roundtable is every first Wednesday of the month.
It's by Zoom?
If you are interested, just send us your email and you will get an invitation every month.
Okay. Thank you.
It was nice to see you all.
Bye-bye.